Becoming a professional athlete can hardly be an accident, but it was for Dutchman Tom Dumoulin. A Giro title, an on-screen toilet break, and a rainbow jersey mark his unique career. However, this year the Dutchman has officially retired from the sport. Today we take a look back on Dumoulin's 10 years at the top. We chart the rise and fall of Tom Dumoulin. Born in 1990 in the city of Maastricht in Dutch Limburg, Tom Dumoulin was raised on the course of the Amstel Gold Race. Naturally, the Dutchman turned to cycling. Tom Dumoulin was faced with an early crossroads: pursue cycling or his studies. Dumoulin has stated that he didn't intend on becoming a pro cyclist. He wanted to become a doctor instead. However, he failed to make it into medical school. Instead, he opted to take a degree in health sciences. After 1 year of studying health sciences, Dumoulin was bored, dropped out, and turned his head back to cycling. Initially giving the sport a 1-year trial period, things started well for Dumoulin. In his first competitive season, Dumoulin won an individual time trial in Portugal, despite having never ridden on a time trial bike before. From here, Dumoulin made a name for himself as one of the brightest talents against the clock. In 2012, his big break would come, signing for the Project 1T4I squad, a team we now know as DSM. That year, Dumoulin pushed forward. A couple of top 10s in both road races and time trials marked his season, but with no major results to his name, it was easy to forget about Dumoulin in the melee. 2013 felt similar. It was unclear what direction Dumoulin would go into. Would it be time trialing, one-day racing, or maybe even GC riding? This was all complicated by his second place overall at the Eneco Tour. In 2014, Dumoulin answered this dilemma. At the age of just 23, he finished every single individual time trial in 2014 within the top 10. From Tirreno Adriatico to the Tour of Alberta to the Tour of Belgium, Dumoulin was making a name for himself as a top-flight time trialist. This all proves what a difference a year can make. 2015 began with a bang for Tommy D. Strong World Tour results were coming his way. Tom was quickly becoming the wildcard in stage races. Beginning the Tour de France 2015 on home soil in Utrecht, Dumoulin saw a wonderful opportunity to take yellow on stage 1. However, the Dutchman missed the mark on the opening time trial, settling for the white jersey instead. The home party would end soon on stage 3 after a high-speed crash forced him to abandon. In response, Dumoulin was thrown into the start list of the Vuelta a España. At the Vuelta, Dumoulin dashed away with the key move on stage 2's mountaintop finish, placing him into second in GC. This was a statement. Dumoulin was here to prove his climbing ability. The statement continued. Stage 9 of the Vuelta a España would go down as one of Dumoulin's most spectacular rides. A long, relentless battle from start to finish saw Dumoulin chasing down the Tour de France champion Chris Froome up the final steep ramp to the line.
Dumoulin, he's a big man. He's not supposed to be able to do this sort of thing. He's a great time trialist. He's proving he's a great rider as well. Oh, chapeau, Tom Dumoulin!
From here, Dumoulin was in front, in red and in control. Or so it seemed. A difficult day in Andorra saw Astana place Fabio Aru in the red jersey, moving Dumoulin down to third. His revenge would soon come against the clock, however, a common theme in the life and works of Tom Dumoulin. Stage 17's individual time trial around Burgos was sharply executed by Dumoulin. The stage and the jersey were his. The GC was tight though, just 3 seconds between Tom Dumoulin and Fabio Aru. They kept fighting though. Every stage was a desperate fight for seconds. However, the less experienced Dumoulin crumbled on the final stage. Astana set a relentless pace and Dumoulin started to hemorrhage time. The result, a move down to 6th place in GC, just 24 hours before the race closed in Madrid. The next year, the expectation was on Dumoulin's shoulders. A couple of close calls against the clock in the early phase of the season would be the closest Dumoulin came to taking a victory before he began the Giro d'Italia on home soil in Apeldoorn. Putting the woes of 2015 behind him, Dumoulin sailed away to individual time trial victory on day 1 in Apeldoorn. Adding a pink jersey to his red jersey, Dumoulin carried on in pink for a couple of days. He looked strong, bullying the GC favourites on the uphill finish to Roccaraso. This stretched out his GC lead, however a saddle sore would force him out of the race once he ceded pink. Next on the agenda, the 2016 Tour de France. With an unclear role in the squad, Dumoulin found himself in the stage hunting field. After a lackluster opening week for the squad, everything fell into place on a rainy day in Andorra, when Dumoulin left his breakaway companions to seal his first ever Tour de France stage win. Within 12 months, Dumoulin had performed a feat not done by any other rider in the 2010s, by winning stages at 3 back-to-back Grand Tours. For the remainder of 2016, Dumoulin was digesting the successes of the previous 12 months. After appearing to be the emerging king of the time trials, Dumoulin threw a spanner in the works and proved himself to be a legitimate GC threat. A new year, a new Tom. Now as a rider capable of winning mountain stages, time trials and hilly days, Dumoulin was one of the key protagonists in the early season narrative in 2017. After a pink jersey stint last year, Dumoulin and Sunweb penciled in a GC target at the 2017 Giro d'Italia, alongside rivals from Nibali to Quintana to Ilnur-Zakarin. After a consistent first week, Dumoulin rose to the top of the pack on stage 9 summit finish in Abruzzo, courtesy of his reliable diesel engine. Announcing himself loudly, Dumoulin found himself in a prime position to jump into the race lead on stage 10's time trial. Like a duck to water, Dumoulin sailed through the time trial to take Tapa Emalia, with a considerable gap to second place Quintana and GC. Pretty in pink, Dumoulin continued to the weekend's mountain stages, in firm control. The steady engine of Tom was challenging the fiery Quintana, Nibali and Pozzovivo on stage 14. Dumoulin was grinding all the favourites off his wheel, and in the final dash to the line on the cobbles of Europa, Dumoulin emerged head and shoulders above the rest.
Dumoulin has done it! King of the mountain, king of the hills, king of the time trial, and I think king in waiting of this Giro d'Italia! Wow, what about that?
With 2 minutes and 47 seconds of a lead in GC, this was by far and away Dumoulin's best Grand Tour ride to date. However, a string of mountain stages awaited. Now, if you Google Tom Dumoulin, I'm very sure that you will stumble across highlights from stage 16 of the Giro. To set the scene, it's the Queen stage of the Centenary Giro d'Italia. We're about to tackle the final climb, and we see Tom Dumoulin at the back of the poop. Sorry, I mean group.
What's happened here? Bike change? Real problems. And he's changing his jersey. Tom Dumoulin. Oh no! No!
I needed to shit. That's it.
This moment was unprecedented. A toilet break during the race. Up in front, the race was on. Like most of Tom Dumoulin's career, he was racing against the clock. Over the highest point of the Giro d'Italia, Dumoulin was isolated in a world alone. Nibali and Quintana had the advantage, with the former taking the stage win. Dumoulin rolled home 2 minutes and 18 seconds down, sanding down his GC lead to less than 1 minute. From here, the state of play completely changed. The politics of the race became interesting. Pacts were being made, pull quotes were being written about. Suddenly, the mix zone became a battlefield.
It was a bit strange tactic because their podium spot is also in danger now. I really would like to see them losing it because of this riding.
Despite clear tension between the Dumoulin alliance and the Quintana alliance, the rivals clashed every day. Dumoulin was almost playing a zero-sum game on some stages, playing with fire in the GC. All in all, Dumoulin slipped out of control on stage 19's mountain stage. A lonely ride up to the summit of Piancavallo saw Quintana retake pink. Stage 20 was similar. Dumoulin and his allies found themselves on the back foot chasing Nairo Quintana and Vincenzo Nibali. Once again, Dumoulin's destiny came down to a race against the clock on stage 21. If the Giro were a symphony, stage 21 was Dumoulin's solo. Floating around the city streets of Milan, Dumoulin was writing history with every single pedal stroke he blessed us with.
Champion, and Tom Dumoulin, oh boy does he deserve this, and he's still powering it in. He hasn't given up at all. He may not take the final day stage, he's got one of those in the bag already. Tom Dumoulin has done it. He has secured his first Grand Tour victory, and for my mind, it may well be the first of many.
Stage glory may have been a bridge too far, but in the GC, Dumoulin did the job. By a matter of 31 seconds, Tom Dumoulin became the champion of the Giro d'Italia in one of the most exciting Grand Tours of the 21st century. Later in 2017, the gold rush continued, with a GC win at the Bink Bank Tour and a rainbow jersey. Giro and world champion, Tom Dumoulin was top of the world. After a commanding 2017, Dumoulin was looking to pull off a Giro Tour double in 2018. One thing stood in the way of that: Team Sky. Starting the Giro against Dumoulin will be none other than defending Tour de France and Vuelta España champion Chris Froome. On day 1, however, Dumoulin imposed himself, taking the stage win and the pink jersey. A day later, Dumoulin ceded the jersey, but he remained in the mix for GC throughout the race. Dumoulin was somewhat in the shadows soon during the Simon Yates Giro Spectacular. It was starting to look like a shoo-in for the Brits, with Dumoulin waiting in the wings after a pragmatic opening 2 weeks of racing at the Giro. All was to change, however. Yates was beginning to wobble after a shaky summit finish to Prato Nevozon, placing Dumoulin just 28 seconds behind Yates. The next day, though, it appeared that Simon Yates had outstayed his welcome as he crumbled on the Colla della Finestra. Dumoulin moved into virtual pink. This wouldn't last long, however, as Froome made a move to ultimately turn around the Giro d'Italia. 40 seconds down now in the GC fight, Tom Dumoulin was outplayed, despite looking like the most reliable over the 3 weeks. All in all, Dumoulin finished the race in second place. From the Giro podium in Rome to the start line of the Tour de France on the Atlantic coastline, Tom Dumoulin made a confident return to the Grande Boucle. A consistent campaign into the mountains placed Tom Dumoulin in the mix for yellow. However, those pesky Team Sky riders were in the way. Geraint Thomas was having the Grand Tour of dreams. A win at Alpe d'Huez in yellow, a convincing GC lead, and a strong team paved the way to Tour de France victory. At the end of week 2, Tom Dumoulin sat comfortably in third place overall, but he was hungry to make that step up. After stage 17 to the Col de Portet, he did just that, moving into second place overall. In the Pyrenees, Dumoulin consolidated another Grand Tour silver medal by claiming a time trial stage win. Standing on the podium in Paris 1 minute and 51 seconds behind Geraint Thomas, Tom Dumoulin was forgiven for feeling like the nearly man of the year. This feeling would only continue. Another silver medal would come his way at the World Time Trial Championships in Innsbruck, and a 4th place in the road race rounded off 2018, a season marked by near misses. 2019 felt like deja vu. Close calls in the early season races teed up Dumoulin for the 2019 Giro. A solid opening time trial in Bologna placed Tom Dumoulin in 5th overall, however the race wouldn't last long. A nasty crash on stage 4 would end Dumoulin's Giro campaign. Behind the scenes, rifts were developing between Dumoulin and his Sunweb squad. The ultimate decision was to sever his contract. Dumoulin's new destination? The super team, Jumbo-Visma. After an unprecedented start to the 2020 season, Dumoulin's role in the team going forward was uncertain. Making his Jumbo-Visma debut at the Tour de l'Ain, Dumoulin slotted into the Primož Roglič focus setup. Alongside the likes of George Bennett, Sepp Kuss and Primož, Dumoulin was lined up to strike Tour de France success. For the Tour, Dumoulin was backup leader. The plan for Jumbo was to protect the two and keep their GC hopes high. However, after a knock on stage 2, Dumoulin became agitated at the race. Nevertheless, by supporting Roglič, Dumoulin found himself in the lower ranks of top 10 in the final week of racing. Ultimately, Tom stepped up to the plate on stage 20's mesmerizing time trial to the Planche, taking the hot seat before, well, you know the rest. With the turmoil of 2020 behind him, Dumoulin announced that he would take a break from professional cycling in the winter of 2021. The break would last 6 months before making his comeback at the 2021 Tour de Suisse. Although his grand general classification results were missing, Dumoulin was making progress in his natural discipline, the time trial. A national title and an Olympic silver medal came his way in the summer of 2021. In 2022, it seemed like Dumoulin was in autopilot. Another Giro start, another near miss in the time trial, and Tom Dumoulin soon made his announcement that he would retire at the end of the season. After a string of disappointing results, including a crash in a race dedicated to his own name, Tom Dumoulin called it quits early, closing the final chapter of the Dumoulin story. So what went wrong for Dumoulin? He always faced a dilemma, particularly as he rose to such prominence in the sport. Would he be a time trialist, a stage hunter, or a GC threat? All 3 of these targets require very different training programs, physiology, and a different kind of mentality. Dumoulin stumbled into GC hunting, but he fit into the mold well. Dumoulin had the winning mentality. He was always making calculations and risk assessments on the road. He knew he wasn't the 60-kilogram climber that his rivals were. Dumoulin had to play the game and take back time when he could. However, with his team, Dumoulin always felt like a lone soldier. Sunweb allowed Tom the limelight and control of their squad, even if the domestiques weren't quite up to the job of controlling a Grand Tour. Once Dumoulin moved to Jumbo-Visma, his time as the #1 gun was over. From here, he was playing second fiddle to Primož Roglič, who appeared to be the modern upgrade on Tom Dumoulin. Nevertheless, Dumoulin had the maturity to step back and reevaluate whether he wanted to continue putting himself through the pain of being a professional athlete. For Tom, Tom cycling was never the intended pathway. Remember, if it wasn't for that medical school rejection, Tom Dumoulin would have never tried his hand at being a pro cyclist. After 10 years of winging it rather successfully, Tom has new things to focus on and new goals on the horizon. So after 3 Grand Tour podiums and a rainbow jersey, that's what the f*** happened to Tom Dumoulin.